every single time we start an episode, there's a song that goes through my head, and it's like do 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 do. I don't know why.
Really?
Every time. That's why I'm usually like rocking to something. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, which you absolutely should be, go ahead and head on over, type in Trigger Day of Podcast, and you can see all the shenanigans from all the episodes that we have. But anytime we start an episode, literally that song goes through my head, and I'm always
You are always dancing, but I have no idea why. So then I try to like come in like, okay, guess we're dancing.
Because that's the song. I do not know why, but it's always do 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 do. Only that first part. Only that first part. So shout out to you, Music Soul Child. Thanks for that one. But no, this conversation today, listen, I told y'all, and we have been very clear, season 7 is the season of really, really uncomfortable conversations. It has been so not only informative, but so transformative so far in this conversation around the pressures of being a step parent, because that's something that I have not heard many people talk about, especially not in the way in which we're going to talk about it today, right?
Right. And I, being a step parent, am very excited to have this conversation and hoping that I can even gain some insight from our guests. So we definitely want to welcome children's book author, Miss Jennie Guay.
Hey.
all the way from England, yeah?
That's right. I'm a Canadian living in England, so you'll notice there's no British accent, unfortunately.
Oh,
man. That's okay. That's okay. Stay there a little longer. I think you can pick it up. I have faith in you. I have full faith in you. But no, this conversation today, like I said, I'm really, really excited about, because I really want us to kind of hear all sides of it. So from the, what is it like coming in to a relationship or a situation where there are children already, alive and well, to where there are children already, present in the relationship. And also too, from me, I am a woman who now my child has a step parent, and there have been, challenges in just transitioning to, as the person who is the mother who birthed her, to now having to share her with another person who will be a parental figure in her life, what that means, and how, how we handle the honestly, the pressures and the issues and the situational experiences that come with it. So this one right here, extra excited about. So we always like to start, before we get into all the nitty gritty. We all know, okay, we folks have lots of titles, lots of accolades, lots of things that they've done. But outside of all of that, like, who is it that you like to say that you are?
I think this is such an interesting and fun question, and probably an exercise that lots of people need to go through. And it's also a tricky one. I think for me, I am just a woman who lives honestly and authentically, who is trying to leave behind some positive footprints that others can follow.
Ooh, I love that. Especially the living authentically and honestly. The authentic piece, usually you would think that it automatically comes with the honesty, but in my experience, that's not always the case. Mm-hmm. You can be authentic to something that you're not being honest about.
Mm-hmm, for sure.
And so wrapping the two and merging the two, ensuring that, because you can be authentic to a character or to a thing that you think is you. And then when you get really, really honest about it, it's like, that wasn't even me. That wasn't me at all.
Who was that?
Absolutely. Person? And it's an uncomfortable place to sit in as well, to live honestly, because not everyone's receptive to honesty. So it takes some resilience, and it takes some practice, I think, to live honestly.
And authentically, yeah.
And authentically, absolutely. And your authenticity, because we're always evolving and changing every day, every month, every year. So that's always, it's constantly going to change for you. So you always have to, that's where the honesty part comes in. I'm not always going to get it right.
Yeah. So we definitely want to dive right into your journey of step parenthood. And, I love me a good stat. Okay. I love
Yeah.
statistics. I love them. I know that there's so much wrong with them in so many ways, but I think that they can be useful. So, according to a 2003 report published by the University of Florida, 40% of married couples with children in the US are step couples, meaning that at least one person has a child from a previous relationship. So, how did you become a step parent? What was that journey like for you? And what was your biggest challenge in the beginning with that adjustment?
For sure. Okay. So, um, my journey is probably a little bit more unique than most. So, I'm a lesbian, and I met my now wife on Tinder. Um, so
Okay,
shout out to
Tinder.
dating app, right?
I love
I'm not sure
it.
that's like that was 10 years or that was about 8 years ago. So I feel like it's moved on quite a bit to other dating apps, but at the time, Tinder was the
Tinder
jam.
was one. Yes.
Yeah, that's right. And so yeah, we met on Tinder, and she told me right from the get-go that she had children. She had two children.
Mhm.
Um, and when we started getting more serious, and I said it very, very clearly to her that I wasn't interested in meeting the children until her and I were secure in our relationship and we knew there was going to be longevity to it.
I know. We interrupted at the best part, but hear me out.
Dating should not be this hard. Let's be honest. We've all said it at least once that the dating pool has pee in it.
It has to. After dozens of dates, too many failed relationships, engagements, marriages, and even a divorce, we decided it was crucial that we find ways to be better at attracting the partners that we desire. So we did just that. And we created the Dating Well AF course.
It's specifically designed to show women how to date with intention and in alignment with their desired type of lifestyle and experience. The 5-module crash course developed by certified coaches Alicia and Danny provides practical tools to date well and live even better.
So I want you to register now for lifetime access to the Dating Well AF course at datingwellaf.com. You will tap all the way in to learn how to identify those self-sabotaging behaviors, discover new ways to date intentionally, and to nurture that healthy love.
Remember, one of the most important life decisions you will ever make is who you decide to make your partner. Make the choice well and visit datingwellaf.com.
Now, back to the episode.
Because, and I've said this previously before to and on other podcasts and to other people, I come from a very kind of healthy family dynamic. My parents are still together, and they take parenting very seriously and all of that. So by my nature, I take parenting very, very seriously. And if we weren't going to be serious about building a life together, I did not want to disrupt those children's lives. So we waited a few months until her and I decided, like, yes, we're going to forge a path together and we're going to build our lives together. And then I met the kids. And as soon as I met them, they were babies. So they were 1 and 3 at the time, which we can get into is a blessing. For me, it was very much a blessing that they were as young as they were. And yeah, it was just, we instantly kind of built our unit just right away. I built a bond with the kids right away. I felt really maternal towards them right away. And it was just this inner knowing that, this unit is exactly where I'm supposed to be.
That for me is something that doesn't always happen. And I kind of have experienced it from the other side, in that sometimes when you meet children, or they're are already children who are in the relationship, it can cause some major stressors, because there are differences in how how you feel children should be raised. There are differences in how they should be disciplined, or what the values are that should be kind of put in them. And so that level of stress, and just figuring out not only the relationship, and I love the fact that you were very intentional from the beginning about no, let's make sure, because I know what is produced when you have a healthy family unit. Let's make sure that we're sure about us before we also bring children into, our situation. Let's make sure, like, okay, I'm for real about you, you're for real about me, so that we don't disrupt their lives more than kind of, because with the initial breakup, there's already some disruption there,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just love that word intentional that you used, because it was very intentional, and it wasn't easy breezy. There was definitely, Sam and I had to sit down and really talk about parenting styles and talk about my role that I was going to play. And for me, I said, I can't sit back and be idle. Like, if I'm going to be a part of this unit, I need to be able to actively participate in it. How do you feel about that? And so we had, you have to have those, that's part of being an adult. You have to have those kinds of conversations.
Can you dive in a little bit more as to what that conversation looks like, and like how you navigate that conversation? Because I remember early in my step parent journey, so I'm a step parent as well. Like I said, my husband has a child from his previous marriage, and I met him when he was like 7 or 8, which we talked about is a very different experience than meeting them at 1 and 3. And when they're babies, when they're 7, they're a little bit more molded into kind of their personality. Well, yeah, they're just like a little bit more who they are already. They're not, cute cuddly babies you pick up and kiss, right? They're like little humans, tiny humans walking around with their own kind of autonomy. But that was a really big struggle for me, trying to figure out where I fit in the parenting style, because I too take parenting maybe way more seriously than I should. I don't know if that's possible, but I'm like really.
There's no such thing.
I just am really specific.
I think there might be, but Danny, you don't fit the mold. But I think there might be.
But I'm really like, it is so important to me. I think it's the most important job in the world to be a parent. And my goal is to be like an excellent parent. Like, I don't want to just be like, I want to be the parent you like really thank when you're winning awards and like you cry. Like, I want to be that parent to my children. Like, I just want to be that parent that just like,
already.
That they quote in their 50s, the good things. Like, anyways, I'm really into it. And I remember stepping into step parenthood. I was actually pregnant pretty early on into that role. And I remember kind of being like, okay, what are the rules with this step parent thing? Like, what can I say? What can I say? I felt like our views differed a little bit on discipline and what it should look like. So it was just, and then it's like, I'd never been a parent before. So I felt like I didn't have any clout. I didn't have any, like anything to stand on, because I didn't have the experience, but I really had these strong views and feelings. So can you kind of give us just a little bit more insight? Because I remember that being very, very challenging for me. So I'm sure it's challenging for a lot of people when they're trying to step into a space and they're just not really sure how they should behave.
Right. So I think a good place to start is to sit down and talk about, well, what do you think a bad parent looks like? So to start from, I think hitting your kids is wrong. I think, so you go through like you said, discipline is, I think, probably one of the biggest issues of contention between not just two parents, but multiple parents. It has to be consistent, right? And so discipline only works if it's consistent. So just going through, like, what do you think bad looks like? So that's a really good starting point.
That's a good one.
It's really good.
Level setting. And that's something that this is why I'm so happy about this conversation, y'all, because I have been having all the challenges with my ex and his now wife. And this is a struggle for me. So I love that first level set on what is bad. Okay. All right. I'm listening. I'm taking my notes. I hope y'all are too. What is bad?
And then from there, if you can get on the same page as to what you think is bad, then there's no, and I always say this, there's no right way to parent, but between two people or three people or however many adults are in the family dynamic, there is a wrong way to parent. So, there is like a bad way to do it if you all agree on that. So you can have multiple different ways of doing the right thing together, because you might vary on that. But if you all agree that none of them have negative implications on the children, then you can all kind of get on board with each other.
Okay.
And if you all agree on the wrong way to do it, then that is a really strong position to start with.
Okay. Okay. So you start
Um,
first with what you feel is the wrong way to do it, because people can usually identify what they don't like before they can tell you what they do like. So
with
that's
most things. Yeah.
with, yes, with most of life. I really, really love that. But one of the things that I have realized in my own, because again, y'all, I'm on the other side of the step parent experience, is our values are very, 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 when I say very, I think it's 10x. Our values are very different in what we believe is most important for children. So when you're coming into a relationship as a step parent, how, like, what's that conversation like to align, like, okay, what are the values, or what is the vision that we have for this child, and how do we want to prepare this child even though we are in separate houses? Like, what is that like?
Yeah. And so in my dynamic with Sam, like I said from the beginning, I said to her, how do you envision this work? Do you see me as an active participant in parenting with you? Or do you see me as a passenger in this? And when she herself said, she's like, listen, I don't know, like most of us, I don't really know how to be a
Yeah,
great parent. We're all kind of winging it, right? So
we're all
yeah,
winging it.
Exactly.
right. Let's not let's not lie here. We're all winging it.
Yeah.
And so she was very open with me and said, like, I want you to parent and partner with me on this. So that's also kind of key as a step parent, is understanding how the the primary parent views you. You have to know that.
Okay.
That has to be very clear right away. So if
Okay.
they say, no, I'm going to be taking the lead on this, and I need you to kind of do these maybe household tasks with the kids or whatever. So you separate what each person's responsibilities are going to be, but I am the disciplinarian as the core parent, and I am the one who makes the decision on schooling, religion, blah, 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 all the kind of foundational sides of things. And then you help me with the day-to-day. That's your role as the step parent. So that could be one dynamic. For our dynamic, it was, we make all joint decisions together. She sees me as an equal parent in this. And that to me was also very important. And I wasn't willing to move forward unless that was going to be our dynamic.
Okay. And do you all, because like Alicia says, she's on the other side of it, where she's the
Yeah.
primary parent outside of the household that you share as a step parent with the primary caregiver. So
Right.
do you involve that person in the conversation at any point? Like, is there a conversation that should be or needs to be had to kind of make sure everyone across households is involved? Because like in my dynamic, I've never had a conversation with my stepson's mother, and not because I don't want to, right? That's just the dynamic.
I mean,
Right?
it's
Whether
very
or not
complex.
yeah, and it is very complex, and it is like, you do have to um you have to keep all of those things in mind. Like, yeah, the children are in it, and they're usually something that people can navigate, but then you're also dealing with another person
Adult
outside of it,
person.
an adult human being who has their own way of doing things that can impact your relationship and impact the way things go. They impact the child. So it's like, what's that part like? Because I feel like that's the part that a lot of people, what people call like baby mama drama,
Yeah.
or baby daddy, controlling craziness. Like, those things are there for a reason. And I know that that's
Mhm.
not everyone's case, but for it to be a term, it's because it's happening
real.
somewhere in the world.
Absolutely. Yeah. And in an ideal scenario, everyone would put their adult pants on, put their shit aside, and do what's best for the kids, which is to all sit in a room respectfully and have the conversation about how are we going to parent these kids on a consistent basis across the
Wouldn't
board. So
that be
there's
so nice? That just sounds
wouldn't
like
it?
Listen,
Wouldn't it?
listen. But I think the biggest issue with that, so I have had multiple conversations, again, like I said, because I'm on the other side, multiple conversations. And for me, I think it's just very, very difficult for me to, I think this is where I've got a lot more work to do, to parent with anyone, and I'm not saying this is how I feel, but one thing I've noticed is if I feel someone is incompetent, I immediately know. I'm turned off. I don't really want to have a conversation. I totally feel like there's no value that you bring to the table, or the value that you do bring to the table. And I admit, so anyone listening to this, I know that this is a not a positive way to think or feel. I am working on it. But for me, the moment I realize someone, or I believe someone is incompetent, I immediately feel like, okay, I'll just run this race, or I'll handle this, I'll manage this, and I won't include them, because I'm like, the value you bring to the table is slim to none. And I know that's not good. So I might need to put on some bigger adult panties
I
to
mean, that statement in itself. So the competency part now so there's competency, and like I think we had this conversation in our previous discussions, but about when you have to co-parent or you share custody with somebody whose competency level might not be where it should be because of a mental health issue or personality disorder issue, which adds an extra layer of complexity.
Oh yeah.
So if we're talking about competency simply because, it's a functioning adult who just doesn't get it the way you get it, then that's, I think, a little bit easier to navigate. I think you can still try parenting that parent. Use your parenting tactics on them to sit them down and speak to them in a way that is respectful, but using tactics you would with a child or a preteen. But when you're dealing with a parent that you share custody with who has mental health issues or personality disorders, which can make it communication on a general basis impossible, that is a whole other ballgame. That is a whole other kettle of fish that requires strategy and patience.
Yeah. Yeah.
A little bit of Jesus. Somebody.
Well, whoever you talk to, you need to talk to them.
Some divine being needs to come.
Listen, whatever your deity of choice is, you're going to need a whole lot of them.
Call on them. Have them come in too, because you're going to need it.
You got to sage it.
Whatever you got to do.
It is a real challenge. And, the reason why we wanted to have this conversation is because, I guess especially like in Disney or even in just the media, the step parent has like this evil kind of like stereotype of like step parents are bad and step parents are evil and they don't care about your children. And when you actually get into step parenthood, you realize that there's just so much happening in the dynamic that you can understand when people don't always show up as their best selves, because it is just a very great and challenging undertaking that nobody ever really talks about, because I think of that stigma. You don't ever want to be that step parent who has something bad to say or does something wrong or is fitting the evil stepmother type of, stereotype. And it makes people, I think, get quiet. It's like, okay, well, I don't want to be that. And I don't want everyone to think. So you try to put on like your perfect pantsuit, but it just doesn't, it just doesn't work like that. And I think that's why it's important to have these conversations so that people can have a safe space to be like, oh my God, this is hard. And I want to be this noble person who's like doing everything right. But this is really challenging. Because everyone I asked when I was going into I asked my own stepmother, and she gave me the most like fluffy response of all time. I was just like, oh, just try to connect. And like, it was just like, she just made it seem so simple. And that's just not been my experience, So
yeah,
I'm happy to kind of hear someone else kind of talk about the whole spectrum of, yes, it is wonderful in so many ways, but there are definitely areas of opportunity that can be very frustrating.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like oftentimes we don't want to talk about like, the feelings that arise when we are dealing with, very difficult relationship dynamics, right? So whether it's the former partner, like we were talking about, where we're having issues with, maybe there is, some sort of level of incompetence, whether it's educational, situational, whether it's, personality disorder or mental illnesses, whatever the difficulty is, all of the above, or it's sometimes the children, because, and I like to be, maybe sometimes, again, I don't always say it right, but there are some children who are just no disrespect to them, but they're really working on being better humans because they're not so fun. They're not so fun. They are they have behavior issues themselves, or they are just maybe frustrating or irritating to be around. And I know that sounds terrible. Oh, children could never be that. Yeah, okay, I like to tell the truth. So what would you suggest are some of the first steps to like managing your frustrations or even your feelings of helplessness as you attempt to blend a family? Like, because it sounds as though you've done a pretty great job, and I know you said you've still had your stressors and things of that nature, but what
Yeah.
would you suggest for us would be the first step?
To manage the stress around it.
Yeah, and the feelings of helplessness, because because you did not, or you are not, I guess, what did they say, legally responsible for said children.
Yeah.
You're not the primary, so that can for some people make them feel as though they are helpless. So I really love the whole have a conversation. I know that sounds super generic, but I'm going to take that back and try my best to, you know, see how I can use my parenting tactics on my ex-husband. I hope he doesn't listen to these episodes, to see how I can better forge a relationship. So what would you say, like, is the first step when you are attempting to blend a family? How do you manage and move through those feelings of frustration and helplessness?
So one of the things that it worked really well for me, so we mentioned how there's kind of this societal stigma about step parents or stepmoms being monsters and all this kind of stuff, right? Or
Yeah.
stepdads being whatever you want to paint them with. I got the school involved. Me and my partner got the school involved right away. So she introduced me to the teachers, the headmistress. I had meetings with them. I sat down and I was introduced as one of the basically a co-primary who will be picking the kids up and dropping the kids off and going to school events, and put my name on all the email lists and put my name on all of the communications with the school.
Mm.
So I kind of took the reins, with obviously my partner, my wife, also leading the charge as well. So we kind of framed it the way that we wanted it to be framed, which was I am one of the co-primaries, and getting the school involved, which is your child's second home. Like, that is where they're spending the majority of their time. And the adults who care for them, the teachers, the principals, the headmistresses, however your school is set up, how they speak about you with the child is also going to help the child view you in a kind of primary parent role as well. So that is kind of one of the tactical things that you can do, is to get the school involved. In terms of, so sorry, what was the second part of your question?
Just feelings of helplessness or
Yeah.
frustrations, like when you are trying to kind of do those things, there's going to be those moments where it's just like, I don't really know how to navigate it.
Yeah. So whenever I get frustrated with, if the other parent has kind of said something that was incorrect or false, or starting to try and create a false narrative to taint that child's mind about the step parent, which happens, to me all the time unfortunately, with the parent that we share custody with, we just kind of pose the question back to the child and say, well, what do you think about that? Do you think that that's true? And let the child do the thinking for themselves.
Okay.
And when you start to do that, the child will start being more aware of the things that are being told to them that are creating the stresses. And we have to remember that they're children and they're sponges and they're just impressionable minds, and they are unaware of how to manage their own emotions, of course. So going back and forth between homes is highly stressful for them. And our job is to mitigate that. So if you have problems managing stress in your life in general, you are going to struggle as a as a step parent. So I would also advise go and seek counseling, go in and get a therapist. You need to go maybe do some CBT. You need to start finding ways and tools to manage your stress on a daily basis, because what you cannot do is put that on that child who is coming back and forth between two homes. The thing that you can do to help the child manage the stress, because when they will repeat a stream of consciousness that's been told to them. So if you have a parent who is actively practicing parental alienation tactics to make the child feel some kind of way about that other household, that other parent, or that step parent, the only thing that you can really do without villainizing the other parent, because that will bite you in the ass, is to say, that's interesting. What do you think about that? How did that make you feel when she said that? And get the child to start thinking for themselves. And when they start questioning, okay, I didn't feel good when she said that, because that's not my experience. When I'm with you, I feel safe. When I'm with you, I feel happy. So it's contrary to my experience. So that doesn't.
So you're
make sense.
basically teaching them, like you're teaching them how to define things for themselves, no matter
Correct.
what's being told to them. And that is an extremely valuable lesson.
And I always say that, like, you cannot tell children what to think. You have to teach them how to think. And that is going to help you in the long run. And there's going to be bugbears, and there's going to be painful things and stressful things that happen on a daily basis all the time. But what you're working towards is the long game. And enabling your child to think for themselves, or your stepchild to think for themselves, so they question things that are told to them on a general basis. It's not just going to help them in a situation where there might be a parallel parenting situation or parental alienation tactics happening. It's going to help them throughout their life.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those things that you have to, like you said, play the long game and think about that, as opposed to what's happening in that moment. Even though that moment can be frustrating, it's just like planting those healthy seeds. And just like parenting in general is just one really long experiment. Like, we don't know what's going to happen until like it's way too late to do anything about it.
Right.
And you just like cross your fingers and
hope for the best.
For the best. So it is one of those things that being intentional, like we've been talking about, and being strategic and having those things in place.
You have to have a strategy.
You have to have a strategy. Yeah, it kind of helps to buffer some of the things. Like I always tell my husband, who we have a very trying dynamic with his ex-partner. And it's a 50-50 split too, where they're going back and forth. And I know that that can be very difficult for children. But one of the things I say, it's like, if someone is, people can be intentional with doing things that are not so great, right? Like intentionality has nothing to do with the heart behind the matter, right? You can be intentional about being an asshole if you want to be, right? So it's like, we always try to say, like, whatever is happening over there that may not be as positive, we double down on our positive. So it's like
100%, that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. So it's like, if we feel like, okay, this is not, we can see that that's not really happening over there, we try to make sure it's happening over here, like way more, to try to like snuff it out. So it's like, as much as somebody is maybe trying to do harm, and maybe not even intentionally, maybe just with their own shit and trauma, but as much as somebody may be doing a little bit of damage, we try to like override that as much as we can. And it takes a little bit more effort. It takes a lot more work. It takes a lot more patience. It takes a lot more thinking. It takes a lot more like, hold on, wait a second, let's not respond yet, because we have to make sure that like we're responding as our best selves. And it is really challenging to always try to be this bigger person and this better, human for this child that you maybe wouldn't have had to be otherwise. But I do think that it is just a part of what blended families look like. And I know you have a book, your children's book, called How We Blend, the Play-Date Adventures with Family and Friends.
Shall I hold it up?
Yes. And I wanted to dive a little bit into blended family. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions around what it means to be a blended family, right? Like there's this idea that it's not as good for children. It's complicated for children. You're making their lives harder. Why don't you just stick it out with the original parent? Like, I know that's a thing where it's just like, oh, you're supposed to stick it out for these children because you two are going to provide the best household because you're the original parent. So what do you feel are the benefits of a blended family compared to a traditional family that maybe people just don't really think about or know about because that's not what their reality is?
Yeah, so the
That's a
first
good
thing that
one.
I would question is why the obsession with the traditional titles of mom and dad? What is the obsession with um, thinking that you hold a badge of honor because you birthed the child, or you are their biological parent? Families come in all different shapes and sizes, and there are um, a multitude of ways that people can build and have a family, and that don't involve birth mom, birth dad. So number one, we're not moms and dads, we're just all parents. And when you get out of your head and you get out of your ego, and you let go of the fact that I birthed this child, therefore I know what's best, I think that's where a lot of the damage comes in blended dynamic families. Um, you have to just appreciate that children go on feeling, not on a title of mom and dad. So however you make the child feel as a parent, they're going to gravitate towards that parent, whether it's a step parent, an adoptive parent, however you've built your family. So I think I would start from questioning, the obsession with the title of mom and dad, rather than focusing on we're all parents in this together. Um, one of the main things that I wanted to get across with the book is that there are so many wonderful ways to have a family that don't involve the heteronormative experience. And that is through surrogacy, adoption, egg donorship, sperm donorship. So there's all of these wonderful ways to do it. And we don't need to fixate on the kind of traditional heteronormative experience of a family, because as we can see, as you said in your quote before, divorce rates are through the roof. It's not working. So let's open our minds and open our hearts to the fact that blended family dynamics can actually be a wonderful thing for children, and a wonderful thing for the parents also involved as well.
I definitely think it fosters a bit of a village mentality that
Absolutely.
I believe is a little bit more natural to raising children compared to, like, here in America, it's very like nucleus family, like, mom, dad, maybe a
Mm-hmm.
grandparent, maybe. I know, especially in white households, their family structures are a lot more rigid than in black households. Black households have the
Mm-hmm.
most kind of step parent blended, kind of a family. But yes, there are not so great reasons for that. But I also think it's just because, like, culturally, our family dynamic is a little bit more fluid. It's like, I like our family unions are like our cousin's cousin is there,
Yeah.
like everyone's our cousin, everyone's our auntie. Like, like I grew up calling my mom's best friend's auntie and her friend's uncle. And I do the same thing with my daughter. Like, my closest friends, she calls them auntie and stuff. It's just like, it's a little bit more fluid. And I just think that village being there. So thinking of that extra parent as just another person to love on your child, that's there to
Absolutely.
help them become a better person. And that has this other key for them that you may not have as a parent, that can unlock doors and unlock parts of their brain and personality and self-esteem that maybe you haven't been able to tap into yet. It's such a powerful, wonderful, beautiful thing. I was when we were thinking about this episode, I was thinking about my own stepmother. And I remember my stepmother, I'm sure I gave her hell at first because I met her around like 6 or 7, like 7 or 8. And, I'm like,
I was
daddy.
the same age as when you met your stepson.
We're on the same age. Yeah. And my stepmom she was just so kind and so nice. But I was still like, no, like, you're not my mom and I'm not going to be nice to you. But she just like made it impossible to keep being an asshole. And as I got older, she actually became like the person I could go to with secrets. Like,
Yeah.
I could go to her. Like, I think that when I lost my virginity, I think she's the first adult I told. when I got my first tattoo. She's the first adult, like, safe space that I felt like I could go to. And she would really not like tell, like, she would really like hold my secrets and hold this space for me that I thought was so awesome. And that I'm so appreciative of. And I've always felt very loved by her. But as I
Yeah.
got older, I learned to appreciate just the space she would always hold for me, and just allow me to just like lean on her and be this extra dose of love from her that
And that goes to the point of children go off feeling. You felt
yeah,
safe.
yeah, she was very nurturing. She was
Mhm.
very, my mom has her own nurturing ways as well, but my stepmom is a little more like, um, she's a little warmer in certain ways that
Mm.
made it easier to talk to her about those things. Like now I can talk to both of them about stuff, but she just created that space that I may not have had otherwise. And everyone, I wish people understood how important it is, especially for young women, to have older women to lean on and lean into, and
Mhm.
and kind of have that space to cocoon us, especially as we're budding into these beautiful young women. It's a very scary, dark, dangerous space for so many of us as we transition from teenagehood to adulthood. And
Yeah.
she was really like a pillar for me during that time, where I just knew I had a safe space to go talk to someone who knew more than me, who could give me sound advice, who loved me and wanted to see me win. So that was
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing, and it's interesting that you're talking about this because I had that exact relationship. So my stepdaughter is she'll be 10 soon, but they're learning about puberty and everything in school right now, and a couple of her friends have started their periods and they're growing breasts and they're developing.
Yeah.
So her and she comes to me and we have those conversations, much like you had obviously that safe space with your stepmom. She very much has that with me, and I always tell her there's nothing you could ever tell me that would make me angry with you, or
Yeah.
would make me view you any differently. And I want you to tell me anything you want to ever discuss. You can always come to me. And so
Mm.
we've been having these, like, just before bed, she's like brushing her teeth and getting into her room, and she reads every night before bed. And it's like that 15 minutes before she starts her reading is like our time where she says, mom, she calls me mom. Um, today we learned this in school, and my friend, she just told me that she started her period, and is that going to happen to me? And can you tell me what it feels like when your breasts start growing? And like, things that are so kind of intimate and personal to a girl who's about to embark on that next phase of her life, like transitioning from childhood into a teenager or a young woman.
Yeah.
um, I find is like, I feel privileged that she is allowing me into that space with her. And I cherish like those 15 minutes every night that we get together, that she, allows me into her mind. And
Yeah.
um, it's a really beautiful thing, honestly. Like, you were just saying that right now, just it gave me kind of all the feels and the tingles, because I can't wait to see her when she's a beautiful woman like yourself, and having her speak fondly of me, and having those moments as memories that we shared.
Yeah. How do you feel like you built that trust with her over time? Like, was it something that just kind of naturally happened, or was it something that you were very specific? Like, I want her to trust me. I'm the adult. I'm going to build the trust. Like, how would you suggest someone learns to build trust with children, as they're going through that journey of step parenthood? Because it can be one of those things where it's a little touch and go.
Yeah.
And I was reading this thing. This mother was talking about how she's having a hard time with one of her children, and she finds that she keeps shutting down because that's her coping mechanism. And she said that's what her
Mm.
mother did to her, and she's finding that like she doesn't know how to work her way out of it.
Mhm.
And I thought it was so honest. I was like, wow, that's so true. Like, we don't talk about sometimes as parents when our own coping mechanisms work against our connection with our children,
Mhm.
because we always want to seem like we're being these like amazing parents and always handling them correctly. We
Yeah.
clearly, by the state of the world, that is not what's happening. So it's like, how can you build trust? Like, I know for me, that connection piece, especially when they're older, is a little bit more difficult. So what kind of advice would you give someone for that? Because I'm sure that's what most step parents want, is to try to find ways to build trust and connection so that
For
that
sure.
child can see you as that parental figure.
So for one, I see parenting my kids as having a relationship with them. I intentionally try and build a relationship with them, and that means open communication, and more importantly, it means consistency. Consistency in every single thing I do with them, since when I met them when they were 1 and 3 to now when they are 10 and 7, 10 and 8. That goes consistency with the way that we discipline. I do what I say what I do. Like if I tell them I'm going to be somewhere, I'm going to be there. I never lie to them or let them down. I have been consistent with them in every way, shape, or form since the day that I met them. And that is why they trust me today, is because they trust my word and they trust my action, and both of them coincide with each other. And rather than trying to have I'm the parent, therefore I get to control you relationship, which I think a lot of us miss the mark on that. It's not about control. It's about, I'm trying to build a relationship with you so we can work together. I don't want you working against me, and I don't want to work against you. I want you to understand that when I'm telling you to do something, there's a reason behind it. Let me explain that to you. And if you think that there's an error in that, or if you feel like that's going to make you uncomfortable or that's not going to work for you, let's talk through that. So, but on the same token, there's never a place, and I've never allowed there to be a space where disrespect was allowed. So you can question what I'm asking of you, but you do it with respect.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And that goes for anybody that you deal with. Question everything with respect. And that goes back to everything that you guys kind of go back to in your podcasts, is intention. So is your intention in questioning what I'm asking you to do to be belligerent or just disrespectful because you feel like it? Or is it because you genuinely don't think that that's the right thing to do and actually want to understand where I'm coming from? So let's start from there. So I've always had that open communication with them, and equally, they're kids. So sometimes they just want to be disrespectful, in which case, well, what's coming now is a consequence. So consequences are huge in our household. So I'll say something small, like, we need to leave the house for school in 5 minutes. If you don't have your shoes on in 5 minutes, there's a consequence. There's no gray area there. And then if they don't have their shoes on in 5 minutes, guess what? This is what your consequence is. And when you come home from school, you don't get to go on your iPad for the 10 minutes, or and you follow through with the consequence. Yeah. So that's why we have that trust. They know exactly what to expect from me every single time.
Yeah. And children really do need that knowing what to expect. And one of the things that I know I have to deal with. And I was just talking to my daughter the other day, and I was just like, okay, you're 13 now. You are going to have to start to communicate your issues and frustrations and the things you don't understand. You're going to have to figure out a way how to have those conversations with the secondary parent, which is her dad. Mm-hmm. For me, I think I have to do a better job because again, this is the other side, and we like to have very honest conversations. I have to do a better job at respecting the value, or respecting the position, respecting the position that her stepmom has, because from the beginning, when we first started, she kind of told me, well, those are his kids, and I don't have to do anything I don't want to do. And for me, again, the moment my memory sometimes it's not as good, but when there are major things when it comes to my kid, when I hear those things, those are indicators to me that, okay, you don't care. you are just somebody who just, you're there, you're a placeholder. That is not a good energy to try and parent with someone who you don't respect as someone who is actually a parent to your child, who you feel as though they're a placeholder. So one of the things that I really am liking about this conversation is it's like, okay, maybe it is time to revisit certain conversations, because that was what, 10, maybe not 10, 7 or 8 years ago. So maybe it is time to have a different conversation to see, is that still the feeling? Because if that's not still the feeling or the energy, then okay, we can have a different conversation, and then I'll have a different level of respect for you. Because then too, adults need consistency and intention too. We need to consistently know, what are we going to expect? And
From each
for
other.
someone, yes, from each other. And so I really am enjoying this conversation. I want to make sure I say thank you in advance. And no, y'all, we got some more questions. Don't worry, we're not ending yet. But I really want to thank you, because it's like, okay, these are things that I can do better, because we're not also into just, oh, we're perfect, we're never wrong. These are the things that I can do better. These are the ways in which, we can make it so that, as you said earlier, where you're on the same page and you've level set, like you said from the beginning with having that conversation, what is the role I play? I want to have that conversation from the primary parent standpoint. What is the role that you want to play?
Absolutely.
So that I can be sure,
Yep. And something else I think is really important, and this can also be carried over into the other parents that are involved in building or trying to rebuild those relationships, is with my children. I've always found, in terms of building that trust with them and building my relationship with them, I've found loads of power in apology. So as parents, we get things wrong all the time.
All the time.
But when was the last time you apologized to your child for getting something wrong? So I had an incident with, and this will happen to all of us, but my stepkids were having an argument, and I was trying to get to the bottom of what had happened. And they were both saying, he did it, she did it. So somebody was lying, right? And I needed to get to the bottom of it so I could start solving the problem and doling out the consequences, as I do. So at the end of it, I thought that my son was the one who had been lying and that my daughter was telling the truth. And so I was going in on him, and I was like, this is not, appropriate behavior. And, I was really coming down hard on him.
Yeah.
And he kept saying, but I didn't do it. And then I kind of took a step back, and anyways, I'll spare you the details, but we got to the bottom of it. And it turned out she was the one who had lied. It was her.
And she stood there and let him take all that heat.
Of course she did. She was all ready for him to not be able to go to the pool that day. And she was ready. So, I had to deal with that separately. But what I did do, the first thing I did is I pulled him aside and I said to him, I'm really sorry that I blamed you for that. And I'm really sorry that I did not believe you. Do you forgive me? And he said, yes, Mommy, of course I forgive you. It's okay. And he gave me a cuddle. And then I, got to disciplining her. And I said to her, what do you think that just did to my relationship with Harry? Like, that's my son's name. Like, that could have done some damage there. You need to understand the consequences of lying. And so we had to have that conversation. But it was so important for me that he knew that I was sorry, that I was wrong, and I, believed the wrong party and all of that. And that could have had some detrimental consequences. So for me, so there is loads of power in apology, and that is, children will start trusting you more and more and more. If you relate to them, they have to apologize. So we need to show them that so do we when we're wrong. Yeah. And that we can own that. And then, apologizing to each other as parents as well. Maybe we got it wrong 5 years ago when we first sat down and we didn't get on. And I've been carrying this angst with me for the last 5 years. And I just want to start off this conversation with saying, I'm sorry for that. I want to start fresh. Can we get back on? Can we get on a good page together and start parenting together so we can raise some kids to become some functioning adults? Because that's what we all want, right?
Yeah.
So Power of apology.
So a lot of times I feel like as a society, we should be having these conversations again, right? Like revisiting some topics, revisiting some structures and things that are in place that may not serve us as a society, because what's normal for some is not necessarily normal for others, right? And although we are evolving as a society, I hope, I pray, I think, I feel, I'm really rooting for us. There are still those who hold steadfast to more traditional beliefs around what a family unit should look like. And you are you're in an open lesbian couple, and the other parent, the ex-partner of your current partner, is also a woman. So you guys have like a very different dynamic.
Yes.
That's not that's not as traditional, right?
And I have 3 moms too in my situation. It's wild. And we're not, and one man, it's wild. And my sister, who is also a primary on my side, it's wild. The tradition is, for us, it's very non-traditional, but no.
So how can parents guide children who are in non-traditional family structures when they come across those who may scrutinize their parents' lifestyle? And it doesn't always come out as obvious as we think. Sometimes it's those dirty looks. It's energy that children can feel when they go to other people's house. It's telling your children not to play with this child because of whatever. A lot of times it's not even the children who really feel that way, but those are the feelings they're feeling from their parents. And children pick up on all these things. They don't even sometimes mean to express themselves in those ways, right? But their parents sometimes are instilling certain ideas and beliefs in their head based on what they feel. So how can children navigate that in a healthy way and deal with that if they come across it? Because especially here in America, that's like inevitable. So it's like, what does that look like? What does that conversation sound like?
So I think it starts with the conversations in the home. So one of the main messages in How We Blend is that there is no sameness. It doesn't exist. It's a myth. The only thing that makes us same, if you'd like to use that word, or that connects us, as I like to say, is the fact that we are all different. Each and every one of us are unique. There was never one like you before, and there will not be one like you after. And that goes for everybody in the world. So if you're working off that basis, everybody is different, right? So I always say to my kids, how other people view you, and I'm sure you've heard this many times before, it's not really any of your business. That's their stuff. And so you just have to hold your head high, and you carry yourself the way that I'm raising you to carry yourself. And you stay away from people like that. But they're going to come in contact with adversity, and they're going to come in contact with nasty people, bigoted people. Like you said, that's inevitable. You just have to let them know that they're living their life authentically, and those people, probably have the demons that they're carrying, and that's why they feel the way that they do, and that has nothing to do with you.
So essentially what you're saying, it's getting them to understand that just like we get to have our own, thoughts, feelings, emotions, desires, things that work for us, things that don't work for us, just like we get to have those, other people get to have those as well. And even if and when it doesn't align with your own beliefs, they get to have theirs, you get to have yours. And how they feel about you, as long as they're not encroaching on your personal safety, is not your business. Is that kind of what it is?
You articulated that way better than I ever could have. Yes.
It's for me. So I've also had to deal with the difficulties of being other, not just being like a Black girl, but just in terms of our family unit has been very, very different from the beginning. Maybe not from the beginning, from the time my daughter was 2. In that, yes, there are, 3, moms. None of us like each other like that. I mean, I adore the second mom of his daughter. The third mom, she and I have some work to do. She and I definitely have some work to do. And my relationship with my ex-husband is also incredibly interesting. That's incredibly interesting. Definitely some more work to do there as well. But definitely dealing with that type of a dynamic, also with my sister being my primary co-parent. That was very, very challenging, at least for me and my daughter initially, with the types of schools she was going to and the expectations of, having traditional family units. So explaining that to her very, very early, there are going to be people who, don't necessarily agree with how we do things. Um, and that's just that on that. Like, and for me, I've always spoken very candidly with her. I was like, I don't give a shit, and neither should you. um, but it can be challenging, right? And also too, dealing with the emotional aspect. So like, if you see and understanding, this is just my piece of advice, you see like, okay, your kids are having a bit more of a challenge, that even you telling them like, oh, it doesn't matter, it's okay to put them in therapy. I put my daughter in therapy very, very early, because I knew, I'm like, absolutely, everybody needs a therapist, especially if you feel you don't. If you don't feel you need a therapist, you are
then
probably
you're the one that needs the therapist.
You definitely need a
you
therapist.
probably need a therapist.
Yeah, and they have family therapy where you all can go together as a family. Like, it doesn't have to be an individual approach, especially with the children. So there are a lot of options out there now for additional support, and just having these conversations and being open with your struggles, especially if you're a newer person in the dynamic, trying to kind of find your way and see where you fit in. Just having the conversation. Like, I just started at first, I was just trying to just like feel my way in the dark. And then I just started having conversations with my husband, like, okay, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't know what you want me to do. I don't know what's okay. I feel really frustrated. I feel really like helpless. I feel like I don't know like where I stand. And that is really uncomfortable for me. And he was just like, wait, what? Like, of course, like, I want you to be in this with me. I want you on board with me. Like, I need your help. Like, sometimes the primary parent, like you said, they don't know either. Like, we're all just trying to figure it out.
For sure. But what you showed him was your vulnerability.
Yeah.
And by showing vulnerability,
yeah,
other people let their guards down. They feel safe when they're seeing that you're able to be vulnerable with them.
Yeah.
And I think that is probably one of the best starters of healing and mending broken relationships, is for one person to show their vulnerability. So going back to maybe your situation, Elisa, with your other mothers involved, unless you're dealing with somebody with a personality disorder, in which case do not show vulnerability. But I've been there, done that. But if you're just dealing with someone who might be an asshole, showing your vulnerability and that you're willing to let your guard down and let your wall down in order to meet them halfway, I think is a good it's a good way to get that healing started and to get those conversations started.
Yeah. And if it doesn't work for me, I am of the belief that if you know you have done your best, you have tried your best, and it still doesn't work, que sera, sera, what will be, will be. Do your best to prepare the children, get them in some more therapy if that's what you need, and be okay knowing like you're doing your best. And like you said, children understand feeling, they understand energy. So as long as you are consistently putting forth the best energy, you know what it is. And also when the children come and say, well, this is what I've heard, I love the fact that you said, ask them, is this how you feel? What is your experience?
Well, what do you think about that? Based on your experience, what do you think about that? Pose the questions. How did that make you feel when she or he said that?
Yeah, I love that. And I'm going to listen, when I say I was writing, taking notes, I'm going to be making sure like, okay, I incorporate these into my own, like I said, dynamic, because I am on the other side where, like I said, there are 3 moms, and the second mom and I, we co-parent a lot. We take each other's daughters, we travel, we make sure like, okay, is there something that the child needs? We have conversations, like the children know that they can trust in us for whatever it is. So it would just bring me such great joy, because it's the only relationship in my life where there is contention. Every other relationship in my entire experience, there is no contention. There are no, stressors. There are no real frustrations, because I'm able to have conversations. Yeah. This is the only one where there are major points of contention. And I'm just like, but this is such an important one. Why is it so bad?
Yeah. You got to get to the crux of what the issue is.
Yeah.
And the way to do that is to let her know what the crux of the situation is for you.
Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
her what she does that make I feel this way because.
I always think the most important thing is just keeping the children at the forefront. Like, let's all get on the same page of, hey, we want what's best for the children so we don't raise criminals and psychopaths and
And deviance.
members of society that we have to use our tax dollars to keep off the streets. Like that's what parenting is about, right? Like raising decent, at least decent human beings who contribute good things to the world, and I know that's most of our goals, but our emotions and our feelings and our traumas can get in the way of that, and it impacts the children ultimately. So I think the most important thing is just keeping the safety and the health, the mental health and physical health, of course, of the children at the forefront. So thank you so much, Jennie, for having this conversation with us and for being so open, and giving us these tools and tips, because woo child, it's hard out here, for parents, period, right? Not just step parents, for anyone just trying to figure out what it means and what it takes to raise humans, especially when the dynamic is just not traditional. There isn't really a blueprint, right? Like, we're all just trying to figure it out. So thank you so much for that. And we want to make sure that our audience can stay connected with you. They can buy your book. So how can we stay connected? Where can we get the book? Give us all the deets as to how we can follow up with you, keep up.
So you can buy the book on Amazon if you like. It's Howie, Howie Blend. So the child's name is Howie Blend. Play on words. You're welcome. You can also connect on Instagram at Howie Blend. If you want to connect with me professionally, you can find me on LinkedIn. My name is Jennie Guay, under author and creator of Howie Blend. My last name is spelled Guay.
Awesome. You can stay connected with me everywhere at Alicia Reese. Y'all know my parents got excited. ALECHIA, last name Reese, REESE.
And you can stay connected with me at the Danny Bordeaux. Bordeaux is BOURDEAU. You can stay connected with Triggered on Instagram at TriggeredAFPC. You can go to triggeredafpodcast.com. You can go to triggeredafevents.com to see what our next wonderful event will be that we have coming up in 2024. We just have all the things going on. So we want you guys to stay in touch and keep in touch so that we can keep connecting and growing and healing these triggers so that we can be better people and live our highest selves. So thank you guys so much for listening. We appreciate you. Share this with a friend, share this with a step parent, share this with the other parent, right? That you're trying to figure out how to navigate and see if maybe this conversation can spark the conversation that you
use
guys
it as a tool.
Use it as a tool. Like, that's what this is for, like use these conversations that we're having to open up that door for a healthier conversation, and take these tips and tools with you. We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.